the fact that we get to play and love what we do, and someone takes that and puts it in their own sense, and then they get their whole audience pumped up for their team to play.
Metallica, the undisputed titans of heavy metal. For over 4 decades, they've shredded stages worldwide, sold over 125 million albums, and defined thrash metal for generations. But here's the kicker. There are some bands Metallica flat out refuse to tour with. Why? Creative clashes, personal grudges, or just bad vibes? Today, we're diving into the top 10 bands Metallica refuse to tour with, and why. Stick around, because some of these stories are wild, and we've got juicy details you won't find anywhere else. Number 10, The Offspring coming in. At number 10, we have punk rock legends, The Offspring. Now, this one's a confirmed story, and it's a fascinating glimpse into Metallica's mindset during the 90s. According to a 2001 interview with The Offspring frontman Dexter Holland, Metallica turned down an opportunity to tour with them in the mid-1990s, around the time The Offspring's Smash album was blowing up. Why? Well, it comes down to musical direction. In the 90s, Metallica was riding high off the Black Album, moving toward a more mainstream hard rock sound. The Offspring, on the other hand, were leading the punk rock revival with hits like Come Out and Play. Metallica's drummer, Lars Ulrich, reportedly felt that The Offspring's high-energy, skate punk vibe didn't mesh with Metallica's heavier, more serious image at the time. Plus, The Offspring's playful, sarcastic lyrics were a far cry from Metallica's introspective anthems like Nothing Else Matters. There's also a practical angle. Metallica was headlining massive stadiums in the 90s, while The Offspring were still playing smaller venues. The logistics of pairing a punk band with a metal juggernaut might have been tricky. And let's be real, Metallica's fan base might have eaten The Offspring alive if they opened. No bad blood here, just a clash of styles. Dexter Holland later said he respected Metallica's decision, but it's still a what-could-have-been moment for 90s rock fans. Number 9. Limp Bizkit. At number 9, we've got Limp Bizkit, the new metal pioneers who dominated the late 90s and early 2000s. This one's not explicitly confirmed, but the evidence is strong. In the early 2000s, during the height of nu metal, Limp Bizkit was one of the biggest bands around, with hits like Break Stuff and Rollin'. So why didn't Metallica, who were still a massive draw, ever tour with them? First, let's talk image. Metallica's always been about authenticity, grit, raw power, and musicianship. Limp Bizkit, led by Fred Durst's frat boy persona, leaned into a more theatrical, in-your-face style that didn't align with Metallica's vibe. In a 2003 interview with Kerrang, James Hetfield hinted at not being a fan of the nu metal wave, calling some bands more about shock value than substance. While he didn't name-drop Limp Bizkit, it's not hard to connect the dots. There's also the fanbase factor. Metallica's die-hard metal fans weren't exactly embracing nu metal's rap-rock crossover. Pairing with Limp Bizkit could have risked alienating their core audience. And let's not forget Woodstock '99. Limp Bizkit's performance was blamed for inciting riots, which didn't exactly scream reliable tour partner. Metallica, fresh off their S&M Symphony collaboration, likely wanted to distance themselves from that chaos. No tour, no drama. Number 8. Nickelback. Number 8 is Nickelback, the Canadian rock band everyone loves to hate. Now, there's no direct quote from Metallica saying, "We won't tour with Nickelback." But the reasoning here is pretty clear when you look at the timeline and their respective images. In the early 2000s, Nickelback was exploding with Silver Side Up and songs like How You Remind Me. Meanwhile, Metallica was navigating the fallout from their controversial Saint Anger album. Metallica's always prided themselves on being a band for the fans, gritty, uncompromising, and rooted in metal. Nickelback, with their polished, radio-friendly sound, was seen by many metalheads as sell-out rock. Pairing with them could have been a PR nightmare for Metallica, especially during a time when they were already catching flack for Saint Anger's raw production and lack of solos. Plus, there's a cultural mismatch. Metallica's live shows are about intensity, circle pits, headbanging, and raw energy. Nickelback's performances, while popular, leaned more toward mainstream rock anthems. The vibes just didn't align. And let's be honest, Metallica probably didn't want to deal with the internet memes that would have erupted from a Metallica-Nickelback tour. Smart move, guys. Number 7. Creed. At number 7, we have Creed, the post-grunge giants of the late 90s and early 2000s. This one's another case of strong speculation based on Metallica's trajectory. Creed was massive around the time Metallica was touring for Load and Reload, but there's no record of them ever sharing a stage. Why? It boils down to musical philosophy. Creed's emotional, Christian-leaning lyrics and Scott Stapp's theatrical delivery were a world apart from Metallica's aggressive, introspective style. In a 1997 Rolling Stone interview, Lars Ulrich expressed frustration with bands that leaned too heavily into mainstream appeal, saying Metallica wanted to stay true to their roots even with Load's more accessible sound. Creed, with their radio-dominating hits, might have been seen as too commercial for Metallica's taste. There's also the audience factor. Creed's fan base skewed younger and more radio-driven, while Metallica's fans were fiercely loyal metalheads. A tour together could have felt like a mismatch, with Creed's slower ballads clashing with Metallica's high-octane sets. Plus, Metallica was experimenting with their image during the Load era. Short hair, new logo, and they didn't need the added scrutiny of touring with a band that metal purists often mocked. Better to stick with heavier acts like Corrosion of Conformity. Number 6. Linkin Park. Number 6 is Linkin Park, the new metal kings who blended rap, electronica, and metal. This one's interesting because Linkin Park was heavily influenced by Metallica, but there's no evidence of a joint tour, even during the 2000s when both bands were huge. The reason likely comes down to genre differences. Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory and Meteora were massive, but their new metal sound incorporated hip-hop and electronic elements that didn't quite fit Metallica's traditional metal ethos. In a 2008 Loudwire article, James Hetfield praised younger bands, but emphasized Metallica's focus on staying true to their thrash roots with Death Magnetic. Linkin Park's experimental style might have felt too far removed from that vision. There's also a practical side. Linkin Park was headlining their own tours by the mid-2000s, and Metallica was focused on re-establishing their metal cred after Saint Anger. A co-headlining tour might have been logistically tricky, with both bands vying for top billing. And while there's no bad blood, Chester Bennington even covered Metallica songs in tribute. Their audiences had different expectations. Metallica fans wanted mosh pits. Linkin Park fans wanted emotional sing-alongs. No tour, no problem. Number 5. Korn. At number 5, we've got Korn, the band that practically invented nu metal. Korn was massive in the late 90s and early 2000s, but Metallica never toured with them, despite sharing festival bills like Woodstock '99. Why the refusal? It's likely a combination of image and sound. Korn's raw, emotional lyrics and down-tuned guitars were groundbreaking, but they leaned into a darker, more experimental vibe that didn't align with Metallica's polished, thrash-driven approach. In a 1999 Metal Hammer interview, Kirk Hammett said, Metallica preferred touring with bands that shared their live energy. Korn's slower, groove-heavy sets might have felt like a mismatch. There's also the cultural divide. Korn appealed to a younger, angrier crowd, while Metallica's fan base spanned generations. Plus, after the load and reload backlash, Metallica was cautious about aligning with NU Metal's polarizing reputation. They opted for safer bets like Slayer or Pantera for festival lineups. No shade to Korn, they're legends, but Metallica kept their distance. Number 4. Guns N' Roses. Number 4 might surprise you. Guns N' Roses. Wait, didn't they tour together in 1992? Yep, but that tour was such a disaster that Metallica reportedly swore off touring with them again. Let's break it down. The 1992 Guns N' Roses / Metallica Stadium Tour was a clash of titans, but it was plagued by issues. James Hetfield suffered severe burns from a pyrotechnics mishap during a Montreal show, forcing Metallica to cut their set short. Then, Axl Rose's erratic behavior, showing up late, canceling shows, sparked riots among fans. In a 1993 Rolling Stone interview, Lars Ulrich called the tour frustrating and hinted at preferring more reliable partners. The bad blood was real. Musically, they were a decent match. Both bands were huge, with anthems like Sweet Child O' Mine and Enter Sandman. But Guns N' Roses' unpredictable live performances didn't gel with Metallica's disciplined approach. Since 1992, there's been no repeat tour, even when both bands were active. Metallica likely decided one chaotic tour was enough. Number 3. Megadeth. At number 3, we have Megadeth, led by Metallica's former guitarist Dave Mustaine. This one's a no-brainer. There's history here, and it's messy. Mustaine was fired from Metallica in 1983 due to substance abuse and personality clashes just before they recorded Kill 'Em All. He went on to form Megadeth, becoming one of Metallica's biggest rivals. While they've shared festival bills like the Big Four shows in 2010 to 2011, a full-on joint tour has never happened. Why? The tension's still there. In a 2020 Loudwire interview, Mustaine admitted he still felt slighted by Metallica, and James Hetfield's been vocal about keeping their distance to avoid drama. There's also a competitive angle. Both bands are thrash metal giants, and a tour together could have turned into a pissing contest over who's the bigger draw. Metallica's always been protective of their top dog status, and touring with Megadeth might have reopened old wounds. Fans would have loved it, but the bad blood runs too deep. Number 2. Kiss. Number 2 is Kiss, the glam rock legends known for their theatrical live shows. This one's speculative, but the reasoning holds up when you look at Metallica's ethos. Kiss is all about spectacle, makeup, pyrotechnics, and over-the-top antics. Metallica, especially in their early days, prided themselves on being the anti-glam band, focusing on raw musicianship. In a 1986 Kerrang interview, Lars Ulrich famously bashed glam metal, calling it fake and all about image. While he didn't name Kiss directly, it's clear Metallica wanted no part of that scene. By the 90s and 2000s, Kiss was still a massive draw, but their campy style clashed with Metallica's serious, working-class vibe. A tour together would have been a logistical nightmare. Kiss's elaborate stage setups versus Metallica's minimalist approach. Plus, Metallica's fans might have revolted at the idea of sharing a bill with a band seen as less metal. No tour, no glam. Number 1, Slipknot. And at number 1, we have Slipknot, the masked madmen of extreme metal. This one's a big what if, because Slipknot and Metallica are two of the biggest metal bands on the planet, yet they've never toured together. Why? It's all about intensity and control. Slipknot's live shows are pure chaos. Masks, jumpsuits, and 9 guys tearing up the stage. Metallica's shows are intense, but tightly controlled, with a focus on precision. In a 2019 Metal Hammer interview, Corey Taylor praised Metallica, but admitted their approaches to live performances are worlds apart. Slipknot's unpredictable energy might have been too much for Metallica to handle as tour partners. There's also the fan base factor. Slipknot's younger, more extreme audience might have clashed with Metallica's broader, legacy-driven crowd. Plus, both bands are headliners. Neither would want to open for the other. Metallica's been strategic about tour mates, choosing bands like Pantera or Five Finger Death Punch for their M72 World Tour. Slipknot, with their intense image, might have been seen as too risky to share the spotlight. It's a shame, because this tour would have been legendary. And there you have it, the top 10 bands Metallica refused to tour with, and why. From musical mismatches to past beefs, Metallica's been careful about who they share the stage with, and it's helped cement their legacy as metal's greatest band. Which of these refusals surprised you the most? And are there other bands you think Metallica avoided? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content.